Daniel Sports Central beginning over a college ball game preview and prediction on the game of the week coming up in the Sun Belt in Week 11 of this 2020 season, and that's going to be between Coastal Carolina and Troy. And usually I don't preview these teams, but Coastal Carolina's been off to a great start. They're currently ranked 15th in the nation, and they're still undefeated, so it looks like they could be possibly a contender for a big New Year's Six Bowl coming up, but Coastal Carolina definitely has got some work to do before that. Meanwhile, for Troy, they're off to a 4-3 start. Good start for Troy on the other side, so this is probably going to be the toughest game that Coastal Carolina has probably had to play up until this point, so it's going to be a big matchup for both these teams moving forward. And we're going to be going over a full preview and prediction on this one here today, starting out with your team trends. Last week, Coastal Carolina beat South Alabama. 23-6 was the final score there. And of course, South Alabama is not really a good team so far this season. So for it to be as close as it was, I mean, a 17-point win is a good win for Coastal Carolina being a team that wants to contend with Power 5 teams, like big Power 5 teams. You got to be blowing out your opponents, especially if you're in a Group of 5 conference. That's just the thing that you have to do. Like, if you're not in the Power 5, you got to be blowing out your opponents if you want to convince people that you're truly a really good team, which, I mean, Coastal Carolina has done a really good job of that so far this season, but they did have a bit of a close one there against South Alabama. But for Troy, they lost to Georgia Southern 13-20 last week. That was a tough game there for Troy. Obviously, it was really close. But in the end, it was just a loss there. But they're still 4-3, so it's looking good for Troy. They've got a one-game losing streak, though. Meanwhile, for Coastal Carolina, once again, they're ranked 15th in the nation. I believe that's the highest that they've ever been ranked before. So Coastal Carolina is having pretty much the season of a lifetime right now for them. They're 7-0 as well, so they're still undefeated, and they're looking really good heading into this last part of the season. This game's going to be on Saturday, November 14th, noon Eastern in Troy, Alabama. So Troy will be your home team here. Spread currently says Coastal Carolina by 11. ESPN FPI's got Coastal Carolina 72%. And the Vegas prediction also has Coastal Carolina 33-25, meaning the final score prediction right now towards Coastal Carolina's side. So all three of our sources here do have Coastal Carolina, which isn't much of a surprise, obviously, considering Coastal Carolina is 7-0. And they've also gotten off to a much better start than Troy has. But Troy still, don't get me wrong, Troy's a good team. You can't be sleeping on them, especially if you're Coastal Carolina here, because, yeah, Troy's 4-3. They've been having a pretty good season as well, so don't sleep on them by any means. But here's your stat comparison here. Coastal Carolina's got 37 points per game. They got 16 points allowed. You also got 238 pass yards a game, 203 rush yards, and they've been absolutely dominating on the defensive side, only allowing nearly 300 yards per game, which is a great stat, by the way. 174 passing and then 134 rushing. As for Troy, they got 29 points per game, 24 points allowed. They got 302 pass yards. So Troy is a very heavy passing team. There's no doubt about that. And they've got 103 rushing yards per game. And they also got 230 pass yards and 162 rush yards on the defensive side allowed per game so far this season. So both these teams are looking pretty good. I would definitely say Coastal Carolina is better in the stat comparison, but both teams definitely do have their positives. But here's your key points for this one. Coastal Carolina, no doubt, is having as good of a season as they've ever had. I mean, I don't really recall Coastal Carolina ever being ranked, let alone in the top 15 now. So, I mean, yeah, pressure's on for Coastal Carolina, but it seems like they've been really handling it well. I mean, they've gotten a couple of good blowout wins recently. So all around, this team's looking like they're for real right now. Of course, they got to get past Troy in order for that to stay true. But, I mean, for Coastal Carolina, if they want to be a potential contender, I mean, you got to be absolutely blowing at your opponents at this point. Like, I think Coastal Carolina is a good team, but I don't think, like, if they were a college football playoff contender, like, I mean, I think that there should be a possibility of a Group of 5 conference team making it to the playoff, which that's kind of why I hope they expand it to 8 teams eventually. But for Coastal Carolina here, I mean, if they could just be blowing out their opponents, that would be much more convincing. That would really help them in the long run. But for Troy, yeah, they have had a couple of good wins down the stretch. There's no doubt about that either, so watch out for that. But how this game impacts both of these teams, of course, on one side, you got Coastal Carolina, who's still trying to be a top team. Like, they could easily be top 10 this season, I think, considering how crazy it's been and how many upsets that we've seen in the top rankings so far this season. There is a chance, if Coastal Carolina keeps blowing out their opponents and having a good stretch down in through November and the early parts of December, I think Coastal Carolina could be a top 10 team at some point. Only problem is they're going to need to be blowing out their opponents, because once you get into the top 15, it is much, much tougher to be jumping up in the rankings because you don't have as many teams in front of you. So for Coastal Carolina, they got to make sure that they're performing well every single week, and they got to make sure they're consistent too. Like, you cannot have a bad performance, because if you do, your season's already gone. So, I mean, that's the thing about Coastal Carolina, and for any Group of 5 team in general, is that you cannot be taking losses. Like, that's what we've seen out of Memphis in the past, out of UCF, Who else? Yeah, BYU. That'd be this would be a big circumstance for them. If BYU were to take a loss, they'd probably be bumped all the way out of the top 15. So that's kind of the thing right now for these Group 5 teams, is that you can't be taking losses. That's the only problem here. But I think Coastal Carolina is for real. I mean, I've watched them a little bit, and I think Coastal Carolina is a good team. Like, they've got a really good quarterback. There's no doubt about that. But I mean, in the end, yeah, Coastal Carolina, I would say, to be the favorite in this one, and I'm going to go with them here. I think your final score is going to be 35-17. We're going to see it be a little bit closer, a little too close for comfort for Coastal Carolina, but still, it's going to be a good win for this team. I think your halftime score is going to be 21-10. We're going to see Troy hang around for a good chunk of that first quarter, especially into the second quarter too. I think we're going to see Troy right up next to Coastal Carolina, but I think we see Coastal Carolina take a lead right before halftime. That gives them a lot of momentum before the half, and then they come into the second half, get a score right off the bat, and that's going to help them go right towards the finish line, and they're going to get a win here, 35-17. Probability is going to be 65% towards Coastal Carolina, which you may consider that probability rate to be a little bit low on the Coastal Carolina side, but I mean, I feel like that's kind of a comfortable rate right now, or a comfortable percentage there. I mean, I think Troy definitely is a good team. Once again, they're 4-3, and they've had a pretty good season so far, so I do think they hang around. I'm not sure about how much Troy's going to hang around, but I definitely think they'll hang around at least for a good chunk of the first half. With that being said, that was some of my prediction on this game. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this one. Just figured I'd do kind of a unique preview. Usually I don't do previews on the Group of 5 conferences, but I figured, this is kind of a big game for both these teams, so figured I'd do this one. But yeah, then again, thanks again for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this preview, slap a like on it and subscribe as well if you're not already yet. It really helps out your channel, and I'd really appreciate that. But as always, thanks again for watching. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. I will see y'all later.